A codec stands for coder-decoder. All video is going to be encoded and then decoded at some stage and multiple times. I have a lesson I made for us today to go over all of this. And these are going to be the goals of this lesson, so you know what you're going to walk away with by the end of this video. We're going to understand the different types of video codecs that we have, why we have to use codecs. I mean, we won't necessarily have to, but you'll see why we will end up having to use codecs. The differences and intention of specific codecs, the advantages and disadvantages of different types of codecs. So what's the advantage of this one and the disadvantage of the other? And by the end of all of this, you'll be able to pick the right codec for you to use and when to use that codec in different times of video production, for when you're recording, when you're editing, and then when you do the final delivery. So let's get into it. What is a codec? Codec is coder-decoder, and these can be used in video and they can be used in audio. We need to think about how the camera operates now. From the camera, there's a raw video that comes from the sensor, and these generate huge files without codecs. A single 4K frame could be tens of megabytes, and let's say for like an ARRI camera, you can end up with a gigabyte every 2 seconds. Imagine 20 gigabytes for a 1-minute video. I don't think any of our phones would have enough storage for more than 2 videos. So this is why we need a coder and decoder. There's also coder and decoders for audio. You've heard of WAV files, which is just the straight audio, right? But we also have FLOC, fully lossless audio codec. We also have MP3. This is a lossy codec, meaning it's removing data, but it's trying to maintain the perception. We also have M4A and AAC. If you don't know what these are, that's okay, but these are just different audio codecs. I'm sure you might have seen these somewhere, or you will at some point. Why do we use codecs? So modern cameras capture gigabytes of data per minute, which is impractical for storage, is impractical for editing or sharing over the internet. So the codecs reduce the data while preserving as much quality as possible. So in this example, we could think of a JPEG versus a PNG. A JPEG compresses the image, but tries to maintain visual quality while saving data. PNGs retain every single pixel, but it requires more data. And I want to show you an example between JPEG, right, which we've all know, and there's a newer format that hopefully will start becoming more commonly used, is JXL, which is from JPEG. So let me go ahead and open that for us right here. This is JPEG XL. It is only supported in some browsers. The reason it's not fully out there yet is because Google Chrome does not make it supported by default, and it's limiting a majority of the internet. But you can still use it to view and put on your computer and store photos in this way, and I'm gonna show you. So on the left side, we have a JPEG. This is a 14 or 11 kilobyte file, and this is also an 11 kilobyte file. And when I scroll across, you can see the visual fidelity, the quality is way better on the JPEG XL for the same file size. Now, if you want to compare the size, if we do, look, this is way better in quality, and it's even smaller. It's crazy. So JPEG XL is just better. Look, you don't even see a difference here, and it's 25% smaller. So how are we able to reduce the data but maintain the same quality? I don't see a single difference, honestly, swiping between these. This is 18 kilobytes. This is 15. That's JPEG XL. But this goes into mathematics, which we're not going to get into, and how the compression exactly works. But it's a lot of math and a lot of physics and a lot of ways to reduce the amount of data while still maintaining the visual quality, which is based on our perception as humans. So more compression, that means the more we compress, means a smaller file, and you're usually going to get lower quality. That depends on what kind of compression you're using, like JPEG or JXL, but usually that's how it's going to go, like general rule of thumb. Less compression means bigger files, means you can have more data and more quality, most likely. So there's two paths we're about to go down here. We just have the less compressed and the more compressed, and then we're gonna end up back down here. So let's go down to less compression and see what that means. So we have uncompressed codecs, which means we're capturing, which is almost gonna be like raw data, right? It's going to be full capture, no data reduction. Every pixel, the depth, the detail, each frame is stored as pixel values such as RGB or Y, CBCR, which is luminance, color, etc. So per pixel, right? This is going to be extremely high data rates. For example, the ARRI Alexa 35 and this codec, the ARRI RAW 4.6 open gate, 24 frames per second, records at 572 megabytes per second. So imagine 2 seconds, you're already at 1 gig. That's a lot. They also record at higher bit color depth. So you can have 8-bit, you can have 10-bit, 12-bit, 14, and it goes up to 16. Higher bit depth means more colors. With these raw and uncompressed codecs, you're going to have no compression artifacts or none whatsoever. Yeah, so you're not going to have any compression artifacts, or you might have a tiny bit depending on if you're doing some compression. But this is most likely if it's raw video, you're not going to have any compression artifacts. So what is the pros of using this? You're going to get the max quality and flexibility of editing later. You're going to be able to adjust the exposure, the white balance, and have fewer artifacts and it's going to be better for heavy editing. The cons is they're massive file sizes and you're going to need fast hardware. You're going to need a powerful GPU and a powerful CPU, and you're going to need fast data transfer rates. This is the note here. Having higher data rates means you need faster equipment. You need to have SSDs, NVMe SSDs, your ports in your computer. You need to be able to plug in those SSDs and get them fast, or plug them directly into the motherboard to make sure they're as fast as possible. Even if you have like, oh yeah, I have the storage space. If you put it on a spinning hard disk, it's going to read it so slowly, you're not going to be able to get enough into the computer to actually read those files because it's taken a long time to feed the data into the computer. So it can be full. So these uncompressed codecs can be full raw like ARRI, or they can be minimally processed. So they're basically not compressed. They're very minimally processed, just a tiny bit. These are like Apple ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW, right? So let's go on to more compression. So these are the codecs that have more compression. That's going to reduce the data a lot. There's way more stuff involved, but having this understanding of how it kind of works a little bit is going to help you decide which one you should be using. So these reduce data size by analyzing and approximating video content. It's discarding redundant or less perceptible information. How it works: algorithms identify patterns such as static backgrounds and encode them differently. And they're divided into two main types of frame handling. So we have intra-frame compression and we have inter-frame compression. So let's zoom in on this so we don't get lost. Intra means within. That's what intra means. It means within or inside. So we're only using that frame to make compression within that frame. Like a single photo. If you take a single photo, you're only using whatever's in that photo to determine how far you can compress it. The pros: you're gonna have faster decoding and loading. You're gonna have easier editing, like scrubbing on your timeline without lag. It's gonna be higher quality and fewer artifacts. The cons for only intra-frame encoding is they're gonna be still larger files than interframe, which is between multiple frames. It's still compressed and it's gonna be a little bit higher data rates than inter. Examples of these kind of codecs would be ProRes Apple, DNxHR from Avid, JPEG 2000. Some cinema cameras use this, but most likely it's going to be ProRes or DNxHR. There's also intra-frame codecs inside of H.264, H.265. It'll be all intra-frames, meaning each frame is compressed individually within its own frame. Inter-frame compression, what does this mean? It means between frames. So it uses context from adjacent frames to predict and compress differences, motion vectors for moving objects. That's what inter means, between or among. It's inter, between the different frames. Meaning these frames rely on each other to compress the data even further. Let me give you an example. All right, so I had to just draw a little bit, but let's just imagine we have frame 1, frame A, and then it goes to frame B way far, or like, I don't know, let's just say Z. So we know it's a bunch of frames in between. And we have multiple frames like this, right? We have different frames. These frames here in the middle are going to be compressed based on frame A, and then the previous frame, and the previous frame, and the previous frame, and the previous frame, all the way until we get to frame Z. They are dependent on each other, meaning it's able to look at the data from frame A and determine what do we need to compress or what can we save from this frame to just move the data to frame B. So that's how it's able to make that kind of compression. If you want a deeper dive into that, I will leave some links in the description. This one is from Branch Education, How Are Images Compressed. Theo also goes over video compression. He just kind of goes over a article that you can also read as well. But if you would like more of a deep dive on how specifically the compression works, that you can watch. And Tom Scott also has a video about how snow and confetti ruin the compression in videos, and he also talks about bitrate. So these are 3 great examples you can watch. But let's finish. So the interframe compression is between the frames. That's how we're compressing. The pros for this is we're able to get much smaller files, between 10 and 100 megabytes a second, or megabits. It depends on how much compression you're doing. You can do way more or way less. But we're definitely able to get way smaller file sizes because now we're able to compress between the frames as well. So we're able to save a lot more data. And it's sufficient for storage and for streaming. The cons for this is it's slower to decode. It needs a full sequence. It might have more artifacts like blockiness and fast motion or low bitrate edits. And it's harder for frame by frame work. Because imagine if I'm trying to load a frame in the middle of a video, my computer has to decode let's say the 4 frames before it, just so I can load that frame that I was on, because it's based on the previous frames. Compared to intra-frame, where it will just load that frame immediately because it's only compressed within. It's like loading a photo. It's much faster, but it uses more data. That's something you will notice in all codecs. More data is faster if your equipment is also at that speed. And then the more data you save, the more work you have to do to decompress it. So some examples of inter-frame compression would be H.264 or AVC, or H.265 or HEVC, and the newest one is AV1. So these are all compression codecs you've definitely been using on your phone, maybe even on your cameras, or you're viewing this YouTube video with it right now. AV1 is the newer standard, but requires newer GPUs and specific hardware to encode and decode, so it is not the default yet, but in the future I think it will be, because you're able to get more quality at the same data. Just like I explained to you with JXL, AV1 is similar in that fashion. Another way that these codecs produce the data is by reducing the amount of color information. You have definitely seen something called 444 or 422 or 420, and you're like, what does that even mean? It's very simple. Imagine this. Let's start with 444. This means we have the 8 pixels, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. They all have luminance data. You can see this is dark, like medium, and then like a little darker, and then bright. We can see the different brightness in all 4 pixels, as well as on this column. But 444 means every single pixel has its own color. So if you combine the luma and the chroma, you get 8 pixels with 8 different brightnesses and 8 different colors. Our eyes are less perceptive in changes in color than they are to brightness. So you'll notice with all of these, we maintain the luminance levels, the brightness, but we're removing color. If we do 422, you can see that it only captured 1, 2, 3, and 4 colors. It still captures the 4 luminance ones. So you can see here that we have the same dark, the light one, the dark, and the light, but only 4 colors: yellow, purple, red, and pink. Compared to here, we have way more colors. And then another step down is 420. So we still maintained the same 4 brightness levels on each row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different brightness levels. But now we only have 2 colors, yellow and purple. So you see we have the 4 brightness levels and now only one yellow and 1 purple. So we've reduced the amount of data a lot by removing these colors. And we're still able to maintain the quality because our eyes are less susceptible to changes in colors as a human. The data is gone. The data is missing. You cannot go from here and bring the data back. It's gone. But we removed it because perceptually, by looking at the screen, we don't notice that difference. That's great for the final delivery. But if we're recording and we want to do heavy editing to what we did, we want to make sure we have as much data as possible. And that's why people use the uncompressed codecs when they acquire the video, which we're going to get to next. I also have a link in the description is why do we use color subsampling in photos and videos and why does it work if you want more. I'm definitely going to have a lot more links in the description for further learning if you'd like to dive more into it, I already have some AI prompts and some videos you can watch that will explain to you even further. So some examples of compressed codecs. So these are compressed codecs. Intra-frame only, meaning compressed within each frame. ProRes 422 or DNxHR low bandwidth. These are compressed within each frame. And then the codecs that are compressed between frames, meaning you need to look at multiple frames to compress the video. H.265, VP9, or H.264. The pros of using compressed video is we're going to get practical sizes. You can record hours of 4K content on a 120 gigabyte card because you're going to decompress it later. See, it's versatile for delivery. When we imagine trying to upload a 300 gigabyte video on your internet to YouTube, or you want to send your friend a video, no way you're going to do that at the same day with slow like mobile internet. It's not going to work. So we're able to save size, and it's more practical for actual usage. The cons is the quality loss will accumulate if you recompress. So recompressing worsens artifacts. And it is hardware dependent playback. You need to be able to decode these videos with chips like NVIDIA or on your CPU. That's why some older computers and phones have a hard time decompressing these newer codecs because they don't have specific hardware that does that for them. Just like I mentioned to you with the AV1 codec, it's newer, it's able to reduce the data a lot more and maintain the same quality, but it's not as common right now to have the GPUs to decode that or to encode it. So as you compress more, you need better equipment to be able to compress and decompress. Most likely, you're going to be using these for everyday shooting or streaming, recording H.265 for cameras or for web exports. Right now, I'm recording in H.265 through OBS. The next question is, why are we going to choose different codecs? So codecs have different intents, and that is why we have different types. In the video production process, there's 3 phases. Acquisition, you may use intermediary if you need to, and then you have delivery. For example, I can record on my phone and deliver all in a single step without changing any codecs. That's fine. But if I record in RAW, then I can do more post-processing effects to it, like color grading, doing heavy editing, effects, masking, and then I can re-encode it to deliver it to YouTube at a smaller file size. When we are acquiring the video, you might have different intents. You might want to record, so mainly we're going to want to record the sensor data, but are we going to record it at the maximum quality possible? Or are we going to also be able to save space? It's possible. This acquisition can happen in your phone's camera, or in camera, on your phone, on external recorders, like a monitor, a video monitor that you use to record. And you could record in different codecs, like we said, BRAW or ProRes or intraframe, or we can record in compressed, like Interframe H.264, H.265. This is just capturing sensor data. The intermediary codecs, which we'll get into here, which is like DNxHR or ProRes, or straight intraframe codecs. This is the intermediary. This enables us to smooth timeline work. We're able to scrub inside of our timeline very quickly, and we're able to decode quickly with minimal artifacts to avoid quality degradation during cuts and grades. These intermediate codecs will be used most likely in DaVinci Resolve or Premiere. You're not going to use an intermediary codec alone just to have, like, there's no reason to do it unless you're going to be doing something with DaVinci Resolve or Premiere in it. If you're recording on your phone, there's no reason for you to record directly into an intermediary codec because you're just going to upload it. Like, what are you going to do to it? You're not editing it. So most likely, if you're editing, you might use an intermediary codec. They're fast for playback while editing, and these were the examples like DNxHR or ProRes. And then finally, we have delivery. Delivery is like to YouTube or Netflix or social media or Instagram, or just storing the video onto your phone into your gallery. You don't want it to be large. So we want a low file size. We want high quality. If we have a low file size, we can upload easy, we can download it easy, we can transfer it easy. it's just easier in general if you have a powerful CPU and GPU or something as strong as that codec to decode it. These would be like AV1 Codec or H.264, H.265, and most likely at the delivery stage, you're going to use a variable bit rate. We will get into that in another video. These are the 3 steps. Now, you might be wondering, well, can't you record in ProRes RAW? Can't I? So yes, there are some times on some cameras where you can record directly, like your acquisition and intermediary are connected. They're the same codec. You can record in a ProRes intra-frame only, and it's minimally compressed, meaning it still has some compression, but it's very, very minimal. So you're able to get the benefit of less compression. It's still going to be on the higher side, like in the medium size of file sizes, but you're also able to edit quickly with them. So instead of having to acquire the video in a very compressed codec and then convert it into an intermediate codec like DNxHR or a ProRes just so I can edit quickly, you won't have to do that. You just acquire and straight immediately you start editing, and then when you're done, you convert it to an H.265 or H.264 file. Yeah, so there we go. That is the entirety of what we just covered. And hopefully now you understand the different types of codecs we have. We have compressed and uncompressed, and why we have to use it because of the data size, the file sizes, the convenience, as well as the hardware requirements, like having a fast SSD. And now we know the different intention of certain codecs. Certain codecs, like the H.264 and H.265, interframe compression, they're made for delivery. They're made to save, to store, and to get rid of extra data that we cannot perceive, so we can save that data and just discard it. Now we know the advantages and disadvantages of different types of codecs, right? The advantage would be the intra-frame compression means it's compressed only within one frame. It's faster to load. It doesn't require looking at previous frames to decode that. Versus interframe, we save more data, but we might lose a little bit of quality. So each codec has its advantage and disadvantage, and some of them put them together. Like for example, ProRes. You're able to record directly in ProRes, edit in ProRes. If you really wanted to, you can deliver in ProRes as well, but it's going to be a long upload time. And now you should be able to pick the right codec for you to use and when to use that codec in the different types of video production. So for example, when you're recording, when you're editing, and then at the final stage of delivery. This is different for everybody because if you don't have a fast computer, you might not want to use something with a lot of data. A lot of data. You're going to need the storage space. You're going to need SSDs. You're going to be able to transfer those videos quickly. You're going to need to be able to, you need more faster equipment. And you're not going to want to use something, let's say, if you don't have a high-end GPU, then you're not going to want to use something that's super, super large in files because then you're not able to decompress it. See? So that's why it's very variable depending on your situation. What is your camera capable of? What is your equipment capable of? And what is your priorities? What is your intent? Are you going to save the data or increase quality? Or are you going to go in the middle? Try to get something in the middle using intra-frame compression. This is going to be, this is the first video out of a few in the course. And by the end of this course, hopefully you will understand all the different fundamentals from future aspects. So that way later in my future episodes, I'll be able to refer back to this video and you can watch it. You have a full understanding. If you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like this, you want to see better content, you would like to support me and you would like to learn more, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what you've learned. And if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the comments. Me or someone else, one of the viewers will reply, and maybe I can even make a video about it, or we can get into more detail about it. Thank you again for watching, and see you in the next lesson of this course.